Hello, my name is Ana Maria Cárdenas, and I will be presenting research on using augmented reality for memorialization. I conducted this research at the University of Michigan in collaboration with Michael Neveling and Andres Monroy Hernandez, and continued the work with the support of Jennifer Jacobs at the University of California, Santa Barbara. In this presentation, I will introduce our motivation and background, research questions and context, our methodology and results, and close with future research directions. Augmented reality, or AR, offers a unique opportunity to blend a user's physical environment with virtual content. We're particularly excited about the potential of AR for documenting and presenting collecting memory. More concretely, AR offers a new immersive medium for visitor engagement. This is particularly important for museums and other humanitarian institutions because finding new forms of audience engagement is critical for preserving historical and cultural memory and securing resources. The potential of AR for memorialization has already been explored in the context of social justice, advocacy, and remembrance. In our paper, we highlight prior work that uses AR to document forced disappearance, artist censorship, mass human rights violations, and war memorials. While we are enthusiastic about the potential of AR for memorialization, we are also aware of the potential risk this technology poses. AR is a relatively new technology that is only starting to see widespread use. As a result, it is unclear how AR depictions of real-life conflict, discrimination, or violence may affect the victims or viewers. Similarly, we also lack an understanding of how AR content creators can responsibly develop AR technologies, especially when presenting sensitive narratives. Existing AR applications like Poking Go and Ingress show how interaction with real-world contexts can have unintended consequences. Our paper extends these examples with a revision of research that has questioned the use of AR and digital simulations to teach and talk about sensitive contexts like the Holocaust or a humanitarian crisis. We argue that future AR memorialization is dependent on developing methods to responsibly build and evaluate AR technologies that interact with and depict real-life events and experiences. In our work, we investigate the following questions. First, what specific opportunities do AR technologies offer for fostering empathy towards victims in sensitive narratives? Second, what can AR developers learn about ethical and responsible AR design for sensitive narratives from human rights organizations? And third, how can human-computer interaction practitioners collaborate with human rights organizations to find best practices for designing immersive content for sensitive narratives? Colombia has a recorded history of internal armed conflict with multiple belligerents, including paramilitary structures, guerrilla groups, criminal structures fueled by narcotraffic, and national armed forces. Despite the peace agreements, the conflict is still alive today. According to the National Registry of Victims, as of 2022, 9,263,826 civilians are reported as victims. Victims include individuals or their direct family members who have suffered damages such as lesions, emotional suffering, financial loss, or violations of their fundamental rights from illegal actions, whatever the nature of the crime. The Colombian Museum of Memory was established with the mission to collect, communicate, and make the victims' accounts visible as a form for symbolic reparation. The museum continually produces digital and physical exhibitions, audiovisual productions, documents, and reports. The Museum of Memory staff were ideal collaborators to examine the opportunities and risks of AR for memorialization because of their mission to promote understanding and connection between the victims and the citizens of Colombia, overcoming territorial and generational barriers. Furthermore, they collect stories and present them as a form of reparation for the victims while following ethical and professional standards and regulations. We were interested in learning from the museum, eliciting conversations and reflections while collaborating in the design of an AR application. Here, research to design offered a viable method for generating design opportunities and studying ethical challenges. We built on prior collaborative design research methodologies to structure our design collaboration. We structured our exchange with the museum in 3 phases. First, during 2-week sketch critique workshops, we presented the museum staff with designs of AR exhibits for discussion. Second, we met with 5 museum staff members for the prototype critique workshop on the museum's installations. We discussed a functional AR prototype and asked the staff members to create designs for an AR exhibition. And third, we implemented the design resulting from this workshop. Finally, with assistance from the museum staff, we organized a participant study. The museum staff members were new to working with AR as a technology for public engagement. So we began our collaboration by presenting concrete AR apps examples. Here we review the literature for AR taxonomies in the cultural heritage domain to define a set of attributes of an AR app. From these attributes, we created 8 speculative designs. In discussing these designs, the museum staff emphasized the importance of creating exhibitions that enable interaction among audience members. We iterated on our initial prototype through a critique with the museum staff. The staff members interacted with a functional prototype and then attended a technical session to create AR apps. Then we facilitated a co-design exercise where each participant redesigned the prototype, sketching their ideas. The staff members' ideas converged into a proposal that linked the AR to a real-life event. The staff discussed how social media's tagging features could allow people to participate in these events remotely. Our final AR app consisted of an AR adaptation of a current exhibition. This exhibition showcased murals of indigenous NASA communities. The museum staff conceived of the AR app as part of a virtual museum campaign, launched with events of the communities. As part of the experience, the museum distributed paper handouts amongst museum attendees. We include a detailed description of the application and how the AR interacts with the paper handout in our paper. We evaluated the viewer experience with the app through a study conducted at the museum's installations in Bogotá, Colombia. 1 member of the research team and 3 members of the museum staff facilitated the study. We recruited 20 participants, 10 through an internal staff mailing list and 10 through social media. We showed each participant both the original exhibition, which used a web page format, and the AR exhibition. After each, we interviewed participants and finalized the session with a survey that following a closing interview that compared the 2 experiences. From our design process with the museum, we learned that first, AR requires careful design trade-offs to achieve immersion through digital simulation without re-victimization. Second, AR can create an active dialogue with the audience. And third, AR creates both opportunities and challenges for decentralizing exhibitions. In our work with the museum staff, we found a moderate voice that advocates for a less visceral approach to empathy, based on the principle that technology cannot emulate the conditions of victimization. Immersiveness can risk blurring the audience's distinctions between their experience and that of the victims. Both our design process and the result of our study challenge us to select the content and its format carefully. We chose a strategy where we avoided personally identifying elements and avoided approaches where the story was somehow partially enacted by the audience. For further details about our other findings, please see our paper. We carried out a thematic analysis of our study interviews, and from this analysis we learned that first, AR presents challenges to balancing content depth and overshadowing the victims' stories. Second, AR helped tie together the content by victims and the audience input. And third, AR supports both immersion and identity boundaries between spectators and victims. Because we focused the digital augmentation on the murals, the animation, sounds, and color captured the audience, who made fewer remarks about the background behind the images. We learned that it is essential to highlight the seriousness of the victim's experience. Our attempts to avoid this representation in an immersive format made us water down the original story, and made the actual testimony lose weight compared to the audiovisual experience. For more information on this and other findings, please see our paper. Our work poses important questions for the ethical development and deployment of augmented reality in sensitive narratives. Further research is needed to investigate how to balance the immersion factor of these narratives without re-victimizing the protagonist. Input from victims is critical here. There is also a need to explore how to immerse and engage audience in the narratives of victims, and finally, how to solve specific technical challenges that arise from working with vulnerable populations where access to technology is limited. We thank our collaborators in the museum and colleagues for their feedback. Thank you for your attention, and we're happy to answer any further questions.